Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here on Halachipedia in our session on Bishul, cooking on Shabbat. Cooking on Shabbat is one of the 39 categories of prohibited work on Shabbat, and today we're going to try and explore the general concept of cooking on Shabbat and what some of its applications are in general terms. So the definition of Bishul, the definition of cooking on which is prohibited on Shabbat, is the transformation of a food from being uncooked to cooked on Shabbat through the assistance of a fire. So if a person takes food and turns it from uncooked to cooked on Shabbat with the help of a fire, that is Bishul, that constitutes this prohibition of Bishul. However, there are ways that the rabbis categorize cooking that make the topic more complex, and that is as follows. According to what we are taught, it's not just cooking on the fire that's prohibited, but anything that involves cooking on the utensil that was on the fire is included in this prohibition of cooking. So for example, if a person had a boiling pot of water situated on the fire and it boiled up, and then one removed that pot from the fire and then put something into that hot pot of water and cooked it through the hot water, that would be an example of Bishul. That would constitute this prohibition of Bishul because it's the very pot that was on the fire that cooked whatever it is that you put into it. Therefore, that would be Bishul. Now, the question is, does that go on forever? What if I would pour the hot water into another pot and pour it into another pot and so on? Would any form of heating something up be Bishul? And the answer is no. Only whatever would be on the very first pot, only whatever would be put in the first pot that was on the fire will be Bishul. Anything after that would not necessarily be scripturally Bishul, though we will get into the details. But that's the definition in general terms. So what do we call that utensil that's on the fire? That's very important to know. We call it Kli Rishon, first utensil. The rabbis teach us that once something was taken out of this Kli Rishon and put into another utensil, that's called Kli Sheni. And in general, the rabbis believe that Kli Sheni does not constitute this prohibition of Bishul. However, the rabbis did recognize that there are certain things that can cook up really easily, like, for example, tea leaves and things like that can cook up really easily even in a Kli Sheni, even in the second utensil. So they said that even in a Kli Sheni, you should not put those things that are easy to cook. However, because we're not sure which items, which substances get cooked easily and which don't, we avoid using a Kli Sheni, and only in a Kli Shlishi take the liberty to put things in and to heat them up there. So how does this play out? For example, simple example is, let's say you have hot chicken soup on the fire, and you remove it from the fire, because obviously anything that would uncook that would go into that pot while it's in the fire would be cooking, and you remove this pot from the fire. Now, once the pot was removed from the fire, you cannot put something in it as long as it's boiling, because that still is a Kli Rishon, that is the first utensil. However, once it was removed from the Kli Rishon into a second utensil, and definitely into a third, putting something in it despite it being hot is okay, which is why, for example, you're allowed to put you're allowed to put uncooked items into your bowl of soup as long as it's in a third pot, because that would not be a prohibition of Bishul. Now, that's Bishul in general terms. We hope to get into details in future sessions. But in general terms, what did we see? We've seen that Bishul is one of the 39 prohibited categories of work on Shabbat. And what we've seen is that it's not only the fire itself that is something that cooks, but it's also the Kli Rishon, the first utensil that was on the fire, even if it's removed from the fire, that is something that can cook. And we also saw that the rabbis were concerned about having that same cooking in a second utensil from the fire, meaning you poured it from the first into the second. And it's only once it went to a third that there should be no concern at all when putting something and heating it by that. Thank you so much for joining us here with Halachipedia on the laws of Bishul, and we hope to see you again for future sessions. Thank you.